Oh, it says we're live, Sipple. There we are.
How about that?
How about that? Welcome in. It's Husker Extra live, coming to you on Facebook and YouTube. As always, I'm Parker. That's Stephen, the Venerable, Stephen M. Sipple. We'll get it going here. We're just going to give people a couple minutes to filter in. Husker Extra Live, brought to you today and all football season long by Tom Dinsdale Automotive Group in Grand Island and Hastings. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Also, our podcast, Husker Extra Podcast, was recorded, Sipple, yesterday? Yesterday.
Yep.
Yesterday.
Yep.
That's on our website. You can listen to that anywhere you listen to podcasts. So here we are, another Thursday. This time, Sipple, we actually have a game theoretically on the docket for Saturday.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people around that you can tell they're sort of worn out by the whole conversation of, game cancellations. I hear a lot of people say, are they really going to play?
Yeah.
There's a lot. I think people are a little worn out by it already. But yeah, they're playing. We've heard, it's almost funny how many people have said to me, are they going to play? I've heard nothing.
No, yeah.
It would suggest they won't. So let's get that out of the way.
Right. We're going to
cover
Chicago in the morning, so hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look around the Pac-12 and there's already a game canceled. Cal had to cancel Saturday against Washington. So it's definitely part of, there's been, I think, 7 or 8 games already for this weekend that have been postponed or canceled. And it's up to 50 now for the college football season. So it's definitely part of what's going on. But obviously, as far as we know, in good shape for Saturday, be the first game in 2 weeks for Nebraska. So basically, we'll talk about the matchup and also take any questions that anybody's got. So throw them in the comment section. There's already a couple in there. Jesse says, "Hey guys, hey Jesse." Luke says, "Great hearing from you guys already." That's nice of you, Luke. 2 questions already about Omar Manning.
Go ahead.
One's if he had COVID, which would explain why the coaches were hesitant to really nail down why he wasn't playing. Jack, we don't know that for sure. Didn't hear that at any point. Just all we know is that he was dealing with injuries and he also was dealing with personal issues at some point along the way. And as Scott Frost said this morning, the reason why it's probably coming up in the comments here because he's ready to play. So we expect him to make the trip to Northwestern and make his debut this weekend.
We have never heard. To be clear, we have not heard anything through our sources or anything like that about Manning having COVID. I've never heard that.
Yeah, it popped up in my Twitter timeline too. People asking about that, and we have not had really anything in the way of player level data about anybody who has or hasn't. And then 2, it just doesn't, like you say, we haven't heard anything about it. And it's really not important at this point. He's ready to go, is what the coach is saying. So, and Luke asks, Sipple, I'll give you the first shot at this. Do you think that he makes an immediate impact or do you think it'll take a couple games?
It's hard to say. I know people come on here for answers. Sometimes it's difficult to give meaningful answers when I've never seen him in a practice or anything. Covering this team in a very odd way nowadays because of the pandemic. I hope people understand there have been a lot of seasons where we would see a lot of practice, a lot of the lead up into the season. We have not been able to do that this year. So, I wonder how many plays he'll be on the field. I think back to Maurice Purify when he came to Nebraska. It would have been, it was during the Callahan era. Maurice Purify was a big junior college receiver, body type the same. That's why I think of Purify. But it took Purify 3 or 4 games to get going, Parker.
Right.
He had 3 catches through 3 games, and then he took off. Now it's a little different, right? If it takes Omar Manning 3 games, half the season will be over.
Right.
So you hope he gets it going quicker, but we won't know. You'll get a pretty good gauge the first 7 or 8 plays you see him if he's out there for that long.
Yeah, I think that's right. And like you say, it remains to be seen even like how much he's going to play, right? I mean, he was obviously, considered when they signed him almost a year ago now in December to be a candidate to be an instant impact player, but you never know how that transition is going to go. Then obviously it wasn't a normal offseason and he's missed some time and all of that. So very interested to see, does he play 20 snaps? Does he play 70? Does he have 1 target or 12? You just don't know. So we'll learn a lot. Just sort of like we learned a lot about the team, or we saw a lot of things for the first time 2 weeks ago against Ohio State. We'll see Omar Manning probably for the first time on Saturday. Michael asks, are we allowed to call this a signature win if Nebraska beats Northwestern?
I don't think so. No, but it's okay. You know what? Who asked that question?
That was Michael.
Yeah, Michael, it's a great question. And I think there's just a distinction to be made between a signature win and a must win. I do gravitate toward calling it a must win, but no, I wouldn't say signature. I think there's a distinction. A must win because of the West Division chase in a condensed season and the opportunity for Northwestern to go 3-0 in that chase with a game next against Purdue and a relatively manageable schedule, at least by Big Ten standards going forward, while Nebraska would be 0-2 with a loss, staring at a game against Penn State and a little tougher schedule. So I think you could convince me must win. And Parker, I'll tell you something else. I think the fan base needs some energy. I think that the program needs this for everybody, really, for belief. I think this game is largely about belief. And if they lose, it doesn't mean that you should automatically not believe in what Frost is doing, but it would sure enhance your confidence in what he's doing if they're able to win, right?
Yeah, I saw some disparagement on Twitter today about the idea that this would be categorized as a must-win, and it was like, has it come this far that Northwestern is a must-win? But I mean,
what do you say that, Parker?
Well, it's sort of a catch-22 conversation, right? Because it's like, if you say, oh no, it's not a must-win, who cares? Then, like, what are you playing for? And what? Then that's the equivalent of saying that that the division doesn't really matter. Like, winning the division doesn't matter. That's not what you're after this year. Because if you lose this game, you're 3 behind.
You're in trouble. Yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, if you call it like a must win in the second game of a season, I mean, yeah, in a way they're all must wins this year, right? Because all there are conference games. So, I mean, I understand that it sounds dramatic to call it a must win. It's like, I think I said on your radio show, which you responded to with a fantastic retort, that it's not like the world is going to end or anything if they lose, So yeah, it's not a must win, but it's critical, right? And given how wide open the West is, like if Nebraska beats Northwestern, like, why not set your sights on the division? I mean,
right.
That's the beauty of playing this schedule, is you're going to get a shot to play everyone except for Wisconsin at this point, who's ahead of you on your schedule. And so go beat them. Like, let's see it. Why not?
Right. And then the one other thing I'd add quickly is just to the notion that it's just Northwestern is
right.
Sort of silly, in that Northwestern is ranked 26th, and they're one season removed from being 8-1 in the Big Ten and playing Ohio State in a Big Ten championship game. Northwestern is not a program that I would look at as some sort of weak sister. I mean, they're tough. Yeah. 8-1. I mean, 8-1 2 years
8-1.
ago.
Yep.
When's Nebraska sniffed 8-1 in the Big Ten?
Right. John. Yeah. I know. John says he loves the morning show, so he listens.
Thank you, John.
Um,
Thank you, Parker, for being a big part of it.
Right.
You
Tim,
are.
Double Barrel Wednesday, baby. Jake will
Yeah.
find that and add it to the song, maybe.
Yeah.
Tim says, I truly believe that we'll see the best Scott Frost team win since he's been here. That would be, I mean, you could make an argument on that one. I don't know about signature win, but what's the other candidate? 9-6 against Michigan State on senior day, probably, right?
Yep. And I can't remember what that Michigan State team was foundering a little bit. They were not a good offense. They still had a very good – that was a very good Michigan State run-stopping defense. And Nebraska, you know what? Remember that day? Ozigbo ran the ball pretty well.
Yep.
Yeah. And Nebraska ran the ball at him pretty well. Mm-hmm. That's what I remember. It was a good, typical kind of Michigan State, good run-stopping unit. And Ozigbo got some things done against him.
Yeah. Let's see. Nicholas says, nice painting, Sip.
Yeah. Thank you. It's
nice
a clown. Yeah.
Matt's got a good question. Is this the longest time between wins in Nebraska history? Matt, I don't know exactly the answer to that. Nebraska's last win was November 23rd of last year at Maryland. So you're coming up on a year. I want to say, though, I think that in 2018, when Nebraska lost its first 6 games, that went into late October.
Yeah.
And the year before that, their last win came like the first weekend in November against Purdue on the road in 2017. So then they went 4 games to end 2017 and 6 to begin 2018 before they won. So I'm pretty sure that was longer. In fact, I think I remember when they beat Minnesota for Frost's first win, that if they hadn't won that, it would have been a calendar year. I could be wrong about that, but it was right in there. So maybe not.
Yeah. How pleasant.
John asked, do you guys think we'll open up the passing game more this week, or do you think we'll try to run the ball more?
I think they'll have to open up the passing game more. Yep. I think that Northwestern is a tough front 7. And if they can creep guys ever closer to the line of scrimmage and bunch things up, it'll be hard to get much done on the ground. So yeah, I think it'll be pretty important for Nebraska to try to at least, Parker, even if it's just sending a guy deep and throwing it over his head. I mean, that anything that makes them think, okay, they could be going deep helps.
That's my favorite kind of offense. Just chuck it up there.
Well, there's value in that sometimes.
Yeah.
Being able to complete anything down the field, at least do that.
Right. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think it's important. Both are important. But they're going to try to establish the run. I mean, they want to hang their hat on that this year, and with good reason. So I'll be interested to see, 20 against Ohio State 2 weeks ago, 21 quarterback runs, 14 running back runs. Now, there's some distinction in that because at times Luke McCaffrey was lined up as a running back, but personnel-wise, the 2 quarterbacks carried it significantly more than the 2 running backs. So, I would think that would even out a little bit more, or you'd see it tilt more toward the backs, but we'll see about that. Tim said, what was your opinion of Scott Frost's comment singular today at the press conference about Omar Manning? He wouldn't even answer the second question. Yeah, Tim, I didn't make too much of it. The first question was if Omar Manning was going to be involved, and the question was also about other receivers, and Frost sort of answered it, and at the end said, yeah, Omar will be available tomorrow. And the follow-up, or on Saturday, and the follow-up was, what have you seen from him over the past couple of weeks that gives you confidence in him? And he just sort of talked around it. He talked about experience and all of the new receivers and all of that. I took that mostly just as a lot of times, like if Scott would have come out and said, yeah, we expect him to be an instant impact player, or if you would have said what he said on signing day, which was, we think he can change our offense, you're putting a pretty high bar of clearance on the kid before he's ever actually set foot on a game field for your program. So I wasn't surprised that he just sort of said he was going to play and left it at that.
I forgot about that. He said that on signing day, Frosty, that that kid could change their offense.
Yeah, he said he could change us, and he said he's never coached anyone who looks like him. So,
That's sort of thank you for the reminder. That's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good reminder of just what they think of him as a player. Now, a lot has happened, and obviously it's been a long road since then. But yeah, it'll be exciting to see what he's got, and not only on Saturday, but the rest of the way. Nice to have you guys back. Seems normal again. Yeah, Justin, normal as it gets, I guess.
Parker,
Justin says, well, as normal as SIP can be, LOL. Hello from Kansas City.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't disagree with that.
Were you going to say something else, or did you just want to point out that you were?
Well, I wanted to ask you something along the abnormal world. You said that there's a Pac-12 game that already got canceled. Cal and who?
And Washington.
Cal Washington canceled, and we're up to 50 now in college football. Man,
yeah, I think it's 8. I think it's at least 8 this weekend now.
See, now I wouldn't have thought that number would get to 50 that fast.
Yeah. The thing about, and the thing that's crazy, we won't go too far into this, but the thing that's crazy is that at Cal, it's because of the public health department in Berkeley. So they had one player in one position group test positive, and every other player in that position group has to self-isolate now due to contact tracing. And Wilcox, like, he didn't say it was in the quarterback room, but he said, I can't tell you what position group it was, but you can probably figure it out. It's one where you have to have one on the field. So then none of them are available because of contact tracing. And that's and they can't, the other ones have all tested negative, but they can't play. And that's a Berkeley Health Department contact tracing rule. So it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be hard. If that's how it goes, it's going to be hard for Cal to play, I would think, this year.
Yep.
Let's see. Getting the sense that Nebraska is really close to playing well in a game like this and winning by 2+ touchdowns. Thoughts, Jack asks.
Well, I would say if they're going to do that, they'll have to limit the penalties and limit turnovers, first of all.
Yep.
They will, if they do that, it'll mean that they get some explosive plays. I think you're going to need explosive plays. I mean, there's a lot of common sense in these conversations, right, Parker? Northwestern wants you to drive down the field because they want to make you drive down the field because they're counting on you to make a mistake. Well, if you get some big plays, then it diminishes the chances of you having to make a mistake, right?
Yep.
Or it diminishes the chances of you making a mistake. So that's where big plays come in against a defense like this that is tough, keeps everything in front of them, and counts on you to make a mistake.
Yep.
So if you can make a 5-play touchdown drive, that really helps as opposed to having to make it 12 because there's just not a lot of teams that can even do that.
Well, think about last year. Nebraska scored 13 points last year, and Frost said he categorized it as Northwestern's defense whipped them. Think about two of their 3 scoring drives. One was a 42-yard run by Wandale Robinson, big play, explosive play, touchdown. And then the field goal at the end to win the game was an interception around midfield by Lamar Jackson, and then a 32-yard completion to Robinson.
Yeah,
got a field goal range. So I was writing about that today. The 9 possessions before that field goal at the end for Nebraska were 8 punts and a missed field goal. So,
man, see, that's exactly. So big plays will be critical, I think, against this team. If you're going to win by 2 touchdowns, now you might be able to beat them without a bunch of big plays, and you might be able to beat them making mistakes, but you're not going to beat them by 2 touchdowns. Right.
Matt says, will we see Alante Brown, Marcus Fleming, etc., play more and more of the young receivers? Yeah, Matt, I think so. We'll see. The proof is always in the pudding in terms of how much coaches trust guys at any position, including at receiver, when you see how many snaps they play. They both played late against Ohio State. Frost said today that he thought that some of the young receivers were ready to be part of the game plan and involved either this week or before too long. So You'd think I would suspect we'll see more of them this week than a couple weeks ago, but we won't know for sure until after kickoff. Jeremiah asks, who are Northwestern's most dangerous skill guys who would think we have the ability to limit their offense is the suggestion.
I mean, Isaiah Bowser's is capable. I mean, he's a capable running back. He's not a blazer. He's kind of just a tough running back. Now, he did have a big game in the Holiday Bowl in 2018, and then he was hurt most of last year. Jesse Brown is sort of like him. They don't have a lot of explosion on offense.
It's going to be right. It's going to be interesting to see if Riley Lees plays. He might be their best receiver. He got hurt last week against Iowa, and then he was in a sling on the sideline as the game went along. I didn't see any updates on him this week, so we'll see about that. Kyrie Mcgowan was a guy that they really targeted a lot in the second half. He ran the ball. He caught the ball in the second half. He's not Rondale Moore or anything like that, but Kyrie Mcgowan, Riley Lees, Ramad Chakio Bowman. It's a solid group of receivers. I don't think you would consider any of them game breakers, but they get the job done. I mean, the best skill guy that they have probably is a quarterback, Peyton Ramsey, if you want to count him as a skill player.
Yep.
He's athletic enough to beat you with his legs, especially in coverage situations, where maybe the pocket breaks down a little bit, not designed to run, but get you 6 on 3rd and 5, that kind of thing. He did that quite a bit against Iowa. So he's a really good player, and he doesn't have overwhelming talent around him, but he's got enough to work with where he can be efficient.
Hey, Parker, you know what Ramsey is? He's an adult. He's an adult. I mean, he's a grad transfer. He comports himself like an adult. He doesn't get rattled.
Yeah.
He made a horrible decision against Iowa in the fourth quarter, which was really seemingly uncharacteristic interception late.
Yeah.
Where he rolled right and threw into coverage. I was almost floored that he did it, but he came back from it well. He doesn't usually make mistakes like that. He's thrown exactly 1,000 passes in the Big Ten. He's a very seasoned. He's an adult. I mean, he'll be tough to deal with because he won't get rattled. I mean, that's. I don't think Adrian does either, by the way. Right. I mean, I think you're looking at 2 veteran quarterbacks, and it'll be interesting to watch both those guys.
Yeah, I haven't even really considered this, but it's a matchup of the 2 quarterbacks in the Big Ten West that have the most experience in the league. So in that respect, it should be a good one. Harry Husker has a good question here. Do you think high wins last week in Iowa City could be masking how good their quarterback really is? Yeah. Harry, that's a good question. I mean, Iowa's defense gave them fits too. I wouldn't throw the ball down the field much either. So maybe the wind was a big factor. I think I was watching, and I'm pretty sure that at least early in the game, that 17 points that Iowa scored early with the muffed punt and then another short field and a field goal, it was all going downwind. And I did think, that might be sort of a wind-aided 17 in the first quarter. It could well have played a factor. I just know that Ramsey's really good, so we'll see how that goes. This one's for you, Sipple. What did Scott Frost mean by turning the corner? Nebraska fans have been waiting for that for what seems like 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what he meant, but I guess you could boil it down this way. I think turning the corner would be beating Northwestern. That would be a sign that they're turning the corner, right? Yep. I mean, a full turn and all that entails, that's hard to say, but I think a strong piece of evidence that that's really happening would be going and winning this game. And then I'd say maybe even beating Penn State and getting to 3-1. There's different ways to define turning the corner. One that readily comes to mind is Nebraska getting to 3-1 shouldn't be a big surprise if your program's turning the corner. 3-1. I mean, if you're turning the corner, 3-1 shouldn't be a shock, right?
Yeah, it's a little different in a conference-only setup. I mean, we're not talking about South Dakota State and Central Michigan, but I agree.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
That Cincinnati game would have been pretty wild, though, considering Cincinnati now is ranked like number 6 in the country.
Tough.
Yeah. This is a great distraction from checking vote totals. So thanks for doing this, Matt says. Yeah, I think the president is giving a news conference either right now. I don't know if it's still going on, but he was. And I just glanced at Twitter and I was imagining all the tweets I saw being about us rather than him. So there you go. Any updates on Jack Stoll? Sorry if I missed it. Yeah, Brian, we haven't talked about it on here yet, but Frost said today that they absolutely expect him to be back at some point this season. I don't know if it's this week or not. We'll see if he makes the trip. That'll be one indicator. But clearly he avoided the sort of major knee injury that it certainly looked like he suffered on that hit, because it was a vicious one and it had that buckle and yeah, it looked bad. And he was obviously in pain right away, but good news for Jack, obviously, if he's going to be back at some point this year. The problem is we don't have any receivers as fast or as tall as you, Sip. Well, who does?
No, see, that's the problem is they have a bunch of guys who are about my size. They need okay, I'm not going on this rant, but they need another couple guys that are 6'2" and above and that can run,
Interestingly, they've got obviously Omar Manning, Xavier Betts. They've got a couple other guys, like Levi Falk. We'll see. You don't judge a guy in one game. Yeah. And then in the 2021 recruiting class, they've got 3 receivers: Latrell Neville, Sean Hardy, and Kamonte Grimes. Grimes and Hardy are both listed at 6'3", Neville at 6'4". So bigger players.
There you go.
Too.
Parker, that's long overdue at Nebraska. That's long overdue.
Overdue. Do we know which Husker assistants are up in the press box? Yeah, Fred, I do. I don't know if I can rattle them off the top of my head. I know that, Matt Lubick, the offensive coordinator, he's in the box. Mario is in the box. Those are the 2 guys offensively. Held and Austin are both on the field level. On defense, Chenander's on the field. Barrett Rude's on the field. Dawson, I believe, is coaching from the box this year, which makes sense given his experience level and just probably how well he sees the game. And then Tuioti, I think Tuioti's on the field, and I'm not sure about Fisher. I think he might be.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Fisher either.
He might be a box guy. Okay. But yeah, that's about as good as I can do for you off the top of my head. Kevin, thank you for watching. Gary, who is our burner receiver on a long post route? Need a deep threat, especially this weekend. Yeah, Gary. We'll see if it's Omar Manning, and a couple of the other guys that can really run are guys that haven't played much so far. Alante Brown, Marcus Fleming. Fleming's not a big guy. He's listed at 5'11", but he can really run. So we'll see if they can get him more involved. Corey asks how tall the grass is at Northwestern. Yeah, somewhere between jungle and prairie, probably.
Yeah, probably.
Any predictions on which seniors you think will stick around next year? Brady, that's a good question. I haven't honestly given it much thought. You would think that a lot of those guys would want a chance at the next level if they get good feedback, but I don't know. All I know is that Frost has said that unless they hear something dramatic about, scholarship restrictions or whatever, that he would want to invite any of them to come back. Do you feel like the quote, just wanting to play football is helping the team, Michael asks? Do you get the sense that they're closer than ever?
It's hard to say. They played 25. I thought they played 25 minutes of good football against Ohio State. And I'll tell you something. What they did up front on both sides against Ohio State is really encouraging. I didn't necessarily notice it as much as I probably should have that day, but in watching clips and watching portions of the game since, they hung in there really well, and at times did more than hang in there. But to answer that question is really hard. That's why these games are important. We get to size up a program, and a lot of sizing up a program is sizing it up between the line. Well, not just between the lines, sizing up every aspect of it on Saturdays. There's certain things that happen on the rest of the year that are important, But come on, I mean, what I'm looking for on Saturdays, or what I'm looking for in a program's growth, most of it occurs on Saturdays. Everything from just how they look in terms of how they run the offense and defense play to play, but also attitude. You can see culture on Saturdays. There's a lot of things on Saturdays that you can pick up and be able to tell if a program's going the right direction. And that's what we're all looking for every Saturday.
Well said. Corey asked, do you think we finished strong in recruiting? Seem to be picking up steam. Where does that come from? Yeah, Corey, I mean, again, just like Sipple said, the best way to pick up steam in recruiting is to win. Nebraska's done a good job. Obviously, part of the reason why, they've got 21 in the class right now, including the graduate transfer, Chris Kolarovic from Northern Iowa, that committed a few days ago. So let's just do a quick sort of recruiting overview here. Nebraska takes up to 25 this year, and they're at 21 right now. Now, part of that is because they've recruited well through the pandemic. Part of that, naturally, is because recruits have committed and picked their schools at a record pace this year because of the pandemic. There's understandable concern about, is a spot going to be there? Kids back in the spring weren't sure if they were going to be able to get to campus at all. Some of them just made their decisions. Now we know the dead period goes through at least the end of the year. So, these kids really aren't going to get a chance to take official visits. So that has sped up the whole process. That's part of the reason why you see so many kids committed across the country. But Nebraska's got 21. The last two in the boat, Chris Kolarovic, the grad transfer linebacker from Northern Iowa, and then holy cow, I'm gonna just completely
Jalen Weaver. Is it Jalen Weaver?
Yeah, thanks, Sip, the recruiting maestro. The defensive lineman from California, 6'8" and 290 pounds. So massive kid. So they've only got 4 spots left to take a full boat of 25, assuming, of course, that there's no attrition in the class, which is never a sure thing. Probably at least one more defensive lineman, maybe 2 more. They'd like to get a defensive tackle in the class, maybe another defensive end, but then really probably best player available mode. There's a lot of players that they're involved with out there. And so it will be interesting to see how that comes together, because they're sitting in a really good spot, in a spot where they can try to really maximize those last 4. You have to think that they wouldn't mind taking one of those to use for another player in the transfer portal, but given how wacky this offseason is probably going to be and all of the eligibility questions and all of that, I wouldn't be surprised to just see him fill up by 25 to 25 in December and call it good at that point.
Jalen Weaver of Antioch, California, which is a Bay Area school.
He's your kind of guy, yeah. And who else went to Antioch High School, Sipple?
Big running back in Alabama. Yeah, big running back in Alabama. You better wrap up. If you go shoulder first into Najee Harris, you might not get him down.
Yep. Corey, follow-up question from Corey. Are they still working on Avante Dickerson? Obviously the defensive back from West Side. I think that they've been in communication with him. They typically don't stop recruiting guys that they want, even after they've committed. Beyond that, I don't know. You could see a situation in which it would be interesting. I mean, he's close with Kobe Bretz, and Minnesota's defense hasn't been much to write home about so far this fall. I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked to Avante in a long time. I don't profess to have any real insight into that, other than I know they liked him and they recruited him hard, and typically with guys they really want, they keep those lines of communication open as long as the players, reciprocating. How are the new coaches doing in their roles? Michael asks. Seem good so far. We don't have a lot to judge on, but heard, I would say, nothing but good things about both Matt Lubick and Mike Dawson, who is a new old coach. Yep. You agree with that, Sipple?
Yeah, I do. I mean, once again, so many of these questions go back to one-loss record.
Right.
And I mean, let's see what happens tomorrow. I'll have a better idea. I know that sounds like an easy kind of default, but I mean, it's what it comes down to in football. So let's just see. I mean, Lubick is the offensive coordinator. I mean, I like the way the offense looked the other day.
Yep.
I mean, it looked like it was well conceived. Scott has talked about upgrades already because of Lubick. Dawson, I mean, I don't listen. A lot of times I'm waiting 2 years to judge a coach, not one game. He hasn't recruited. He's got to let him get a recruiting class in here. Let him get his own guys and see what happens then. So I wait. I reserve judgment for a couple years usually.
I would say I'm certainly not a professional evaluator or anything, but I thought that the outside linebacker room played with maybe more discipline than I saw or I've seen under Frost so far, and that would be a credit, at least in part, to Mike Dawson. We'll see. Obviously, it's a long season, and that's a group that has some question marks. So we'll see what he can help that group accomplish. I did not. Yeah. David Coder, Sipple says that. Sipple, I didn't tell you that that's who that tall receiver joke. And then he said,
David Coder. Hi, David.
Hashtag friend of Sip.
Yeah, David trains dogs, and he's a great guy. I've known him. We've talked over the years. So nice to hear from you, David.
I'm going to start using the hashtag friend of Sip more often.
Yeah, there's not many of those.
Matt says, Sipple, I think you'll find this interesting. Matt posits that Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern reminds him of Bill Snyder at Kansas State. He's probably the only coach who could have that level of success at that school. They don't have higher aspirations, unique recruiting disadvantages that he's well used to.
Well, it's not a bad comparison. I think I think the world of him as a coach. There was a time I was a little more reserved on him, but that 8-1 season pushed me over the top on him. As far as their recruiting disadvantages, I got a little story. It was sort of interesting. One time at Big Ten Media Days, Parker, sometimes the coaches branch off and they sit at tables.
Sure.
You can go up and, ask them questions. And I led off a question with, I just prefaced a question with, given your recruiting disadvantages, and he stopped me and said, what recruiting disadvantages are you talking about? I said, well, can I ask my full? He goes, no. You said it. What are our recruiting disadvantages? So, yeah, it was kind of interesting. He can be a little feisty.
That's the approach that you probably have to have in that situation.
Yeah, he doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want to hear it is what it is.
John asked if I was drinking moonshine. No, just water out of a Nalgene bottle. If I was drinking moonshine out of a 32-ounce bottle at this point in the night, that would be.
Well, it is a pandemic, Parker.
Yeah.
I don't.
There has been a leg cover, John, for 48 straight hours. We won't wade into that. Quinn says, "What time and channel?" 11 a.m. Big Ten Network. Odd recruiting question from Jack: is NU still working on highly touted linebacker recruit Terrence Lewis? Jack, I don't know the answer to that question. Haven't heard much about that recently. Terrence Lewis is committed to Tennessee, and I guess at this point I'd be surprised if he came to Nebraska. Austin, how's our offensive line matchup with Northwestern's front seven? Probably the matchup I'm most looking forward to watching on Saturday.
Yeah. I think Nebraska's offensive line, I would say, played pretty well against Ohio State. Most people that I trust have been saying that for several days now since that game. So, yeah, I think it's really important for them to take their performance against Ohio State into Evanston, and that would be a great place to start. We said coming into this season that, everybody asked what are the strengths, and I'd say Nebraska's offensive line and quarterbacks are their strength. I don't know which one you'd say more, but I thought that was pretty evident against Ohio State. In both cases, quarterbacks played well, offensive line played well. You saw times where Cameron Jurgens, like you showed me that clip where he pancaked an Ohio State lineman. Pancaked. It was like Dom Raiola. There's a clip where Ben Hart snapped Jonathan Cooper's head back, escorted him down the field. You heard what Greg Austin said yesterday about Ethan Piper. Said that he thinks that he could be an all-conference type player. That's two redshirt freshmen and a sophomore in Jurgens' case. There's a lot of, I think there's a bright future there. Turner Corcoran's seeing action. And I don't know, will we see Turner Corcoran again this week, you think, Parker?
I don't know. I mean, I think Brendan Hymas is probably just too valuable to take off the field unless it's, the game is out of hand as it was late against Ohio State. I mean, they think Brendan Hymas, could be one of the best, if not the best left tackle in the Big Ten. So I don't think they're going to take him out just in the normal run of play, but I think they feel pretty good about Corcoran for being a true freshman if he had to play at left tackle. Will Jordan Riley be ready this week? That's a good question, Brian.
God, that's a good question. Yeah,
don't have a categorical answer on that, but my suspicion is yes. And I guess I'm not totally speculating on that because he made the trip to Ohio State. And before the game, the radio broadcast said he was just a little bit banged up. They weren't sure if he was going to play, but they brought him along. And then he ended up not suiting up and not playing. But with the way it is this year, I mean, you don't bring a guy on the road if he's not close to being ready to play. So 2 weeks later, if I had to guess, I would say yes. I guess we'll find out Saturday. Justin asks, will Wyndon Hohuli commit here soon? Simple, you'll have fun with that name if he does. He's a linebacker from Hawaii and is a really good player, and he's one of the guys that's in the mix. Don't know, Justin, for sure on that. Nebraska's been recruiting him hard. Obviously, from Hawaii, you don't have a chance to come visit Lincoln, but he's not going to have much of a chance to get around and see other places either. So time will tell on that. But certainly, he's one of the guys in the mix for one of those last.
What's his name, Parker? I'm sorry.
Wyndon Hohuli.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing the last name right. I think I got Wyndon, but besides that, what is your opinion of special teams play through one game?
I thought the coverage was good. I thought it was generally solid. Pristup hit a couple big balls. He was a little bit inconsistent.
Yeah.
I don't think that he was. I don't think that he would have been the starter if Daniel Cherney were healthy. But I thought it was better.
Yeah.
But that's a low bar. It's a low bar.
Yeah, right. Pristup netted in his first 3 punts netted 46, 51, and 51. So then he had a couple shorter ones later in the second half. If you're more like the first 3, you're in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm.
A couple more, and then we'll get out of here, Sipple. Corey says Jamie Nance and Demarion Houston feel like they're behind the freshman recruits. If that holds, then no bodies from the previous 2 receiver. Can you name the receiver? Oh, hang on. From Coach, from Coach Williams or Walters, 3+ years ago. Well, yeah, Corey. I mean, not Wando Robinson. I mean, pretty good player. But besides that, yeah, they've struggled in that department. We'll see if Nance and Houston can get it going. But certainly, I mean, they've got to make some progress to catch those guys in the 2020 class. But just so we're clear, Walters did most of the recruiting on the 2020 class. I mean, he was the primary guy on Alante Brown, and he was obviously involved with Omar Manning and Will Nixon too. So yeah, I mean, he recruited that class. I mean, those guys were signed by the time he left. So
good to point out.
Any speculation on Jack Stoll's injury? Zoom, we mentioned it earlier, but he's going to be back at some point this season, so we'll see. We think it's a knee injury. Don't know if he'll play this weekend or not, but it'd be a good sign if he's on the trip. Are you allowed in the press box? Yes, Jesse. We will be in the press box, both of us, on Saturday in Evanston. Pumped for that, Sipple?
I'm sorry, Parker?
Are you pumped for that?
I am. I've said it a couple times, but I'm extremely interested in this game. I think it is. I think it's a big game for the program. It's an intriguing matchup. It'll test Nebraska in a big way, and at a time I think that needs a test.
Yep.
And I think Nebraska's hungry for a test. I think the teams are going to be part of their intrigue. Is both teams I think are really hungry, so I think it'll be intense. It'll be no crowd, but I bet you'll see an intense game, hard hitting, intense game.
I couldn't think of a better way to wrap this up. That is all for tonight. Like we just said, with Jesse's question. We'll be in Evanston this weekend for Nebraska and Northwestern. Thanks to Tom Dinsdale, Automotive Group of Grand Island, and Hastings for sponsoring this. We'll have video for you before the game and after the game, and obviously a ton of content up right now, tomorrow, all weekend at huskerextra.com. So for Sipple, I'm Parker. Thanks for watching, and we will talk to you from Evanston, Illinois this weekend.